Welcome to the California Maverick, a channel fighting for a free and sane California. The California Environmental Quality Act, commonly known as CEQA, was enacted in 1970 under Governor Ronald Reagan. It was signed into law on September 18, 1970. It came into effect on January 1, 1971. CEQA was inspired by the National Environmental Policy Act, which had just been passed by the U.S. Congress in 1969. The legislation emerged during a period of growing environmental awareness in the United States. Events like the 1969 Santa Barbara oil spill heightened public demand for stronger environmental protection. CEQA's primary purpose is to ensure that public agencies consider environmental impacts for their decisions. It required state and local agencies to identify the significant environmental effects of proposed projects, such as construction, infrastructure, development, and land use changes, and to mitigate those impacts where feasible. The law applied to projects that required discretionary approval from a public agency, meaning the agency has the authority to approve, deny, or modify a project. The origins of CEQA can be traced to a 1969 lawsuit, Friends of Mammoth versus Board of Supervisors, which challenged a development project in Monroe County. The California Supreme Court ruled in 1972 that CEQA applied not just to public projects, but also to private activities requiring government permits, significantly broadening its scope. This decision solidified CEQA's role as a cornerstone of California environmental law. By 1979, lawmakers added rules forcing agencies to propose fixes or alternatives to cut environmental damage. The 80s and 90s fine-tuned the process with detailed reports called Environmental Impact Reports, EIRs for short, and negative declarations, which assess whether a project has significant environmental effects that could sink or save a project. In 2008, then Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger was a strong advocate for climate policies, including the Global Warming Solutions Act of 2006, AB 32. Schwarzenegger signed Senate Bill 375, officially known as the Sustainable Communities and Climate Protection Act of 2008, as part of his broader environmental agenda, emphasizing sustainable growth and reducing car dependency. What initially started as a 10-page checklist is now a 500 to 600 page monster with over 440 pages of guidelines and regulations. CEQA started as just environmental guidelines, but has grown into a beast that shapes every major project in California, from homes to highways to reservoirs. Unions have mastered using CEQA to strong-arm developers by filing lawsuits claiming a project's environmental report misses something like traffic or air quality. Then they drop the case once they get a union contract. For example, in 2018, the Carpenters Union sued over the Icon Panorama project in LA's San Fernando Valley. It was a 623-unit house and retail complex. They claimed it worsened traffic, but offered to back off if the developer used only union labor. The delays and prevailing wage added costs, and that pushes up rents. Politicians also use CEQA by delaying projects to win votes or funneling approvals to campaign donors like unions. In Los Angeles, council members have stalled housing projects with CEQA technicalities, only to greenlight others for connected developers. It's a power trip that keeps affordable homes off the market, driving up costs. We can also take the 2025 Palisades fires in Los Angeles and Malibu, where 5,300 homes burned. Firefighters were crippled because the San Ynez Reservoir, 117 million gallons, was empty, and 20% of the hydrants ran dry. The reservoir was offline since February of 2024 for a torn cover. It was delayed by CEQA's endless environmental reviews and the city's slow bidding process. Bureaucrats demanded years of studies for water upgrades, stalling projects like new tanks in Malibu that could have helped. This wasn't about wildlife or the environment at all. All it did was delay critical infrastructure, leaving everyone with high water bills and no fire protection. In San Francisco, a 2016 plan for 1,100 mixed income homes at Balboa Reservoir still hasn't broken ground in 2025. Unions sued over Balboa's traffic impacts, while bureaucrats demanded shadow studies, delaying 1,100 homes for 9 years and counting. Costs have ballooned, and those affordable units still remain a pipe dream. Democrats in this state hold a supermajority, over 3/4 of the legislature in 2025. They can pass any law without a single Republican vote. This is unchecked power, and it allows these politicians and bureaucrats to exploit our system. Our governor is a Democrat. Our lieutenant governor is a Democrat. We have a Democrat attorney general, a Democrat secretary of state. We have Democrat mayors, city councils, and district attorneys all over the state. California right now needs 2.5 million homes just to meet the current demand. But all these delays and lawsuits prevent any of that building to happen. Again, going back to the Palisades and Malibu fire, there are 16,000 homes that need to be built, and only 14% have received permits, and only 6 homes have actually been built in that area. All these delays increase rent. In Los Angeles, the average 1-bedroom is $2,500, while in San Francisco, a 1-bedroom goes for $3,500. And the worst part of it is these units are surrounded by crime in the streets and homelessness all over the sidewalks and right in front of your door. But when these bureaucrats and these Democrat politicians want something built, they'll give exemptions and they'll pass bills, like when the Sacramento Kings wanted to build a new downtown arena and keep the team from leaving town. The state gave exemptions and streamlined the building process. A law firm, Holland & Knight, who deals with CEQA lawsuits all the time, reported in 2015 that 64% of those filing CEQA lawsuits are individuals or local associations with zero history of environmental advocacy or activism. The study goes further and says projects designed to advance California's environmental policy objectives are the most frequent targets of CEQA lawsuits. These include projects with transit, multifamily housing, parks, schools, and libraries. The study also notes that 80% of CEQA lawsuits are in infill locations, which is where environmentalists want us to build. Infill locations are underdeveloped or underutilized parcels of land within already built-up areas, typically urban or suburban, that are suitable for new development. These infill locations are often surrounded by existing buildings and infrastructure. In 2022, a report, again by Holland & Knight, for the Center of Jobs and the Economy, CEQA lawsuits targeting new housing production continue to expand, with 4,999 housing units targeted in the CEQA lawsuits in just 2020. All right, so we know the history of CEQA, we know how it's evolved throughout the years, and now we know what it's become today. So what's the solution? What do we do? Unfortunately, CEQA is a law, and not even a governor can wipe it out with an executive order, but they can order exemptions or simplify the reviews, like they just did last week on June 30th, where they passed legislation for CEQA exemptions for infill locations in urban areas. But what really needs to happen is complete reform, cutting it back to its original 1970s version or abolishing it entirely. Doing that could slash delays, cutting 20 to 30% off housing costs. So we don't have to pay $3,500 a month for a studio or have the average home price be $780,000. But I don't think politicians in Sacramento want to even do that. So what really needs to happen is a seismic shift in California. We need the California legislature, state assembly, and the state senate to be balanced. We can't have a supermajority anymore. There are 80 assembly members and 40 senate seats. 41 out of 80 or 21 out of 40 could pass reforms to not only protect the environment, but also make California affordable. And this isn't about left or right, Democrat or Republican. This is about California. It's a California issue. But we've had decades of one-party policies that have allowed CEQA to morph into a monster that chokes our state and our citizens. California used to be a shining beacon for the nation. Everyone wanted to be like California and wanted to live here. But now it's become a cautionary tale of bureaucratic overreach, missed opportunities, corruption, and incompetent leadership. So a seismic shift is probably not in the cards right now. And huge flips in California probably aren't going to happen, at least not in the near future. But what you can do now is you can call your state assembly member or Senate member and demand reform, because nothing scares politicians like their voter base. What you can also do is educate your family and friends. Anyway, that's all I got for today. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. If you like this video, leave a like, share, and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.